Welcome back to Sane-ish. I'm Joe Carducci, and if you're listening in real time, it's the week when America celebrates freedom, which in 2025 apparently means the uber-rich are bringing their designer suitcases to Venice, while the rest of us are just hoping the AC holds out through another climate emergency. Yes, I'm talking about the billionaire Bezos wedding that got more champagne than the Snap office has funding. But here's the thing. Independence Day isn't just about flag waving and hot dogs. It's about the messy, relentless, sometimes hilarious, sometimes heartbreaking fight to make this country live up to its promises. So, how do we keep fighting for the real promise of this country when the headlines feel like satire and the billionaires are literally partying in palaces? Nobody does it better or skewers it more brilliantly than my guest today. John Fugelsang is a comedian, actor, radio host, and now the author of Separation of Church and Hate, a sane person's guide to taking back the Bible from fundamentalists, fascists, and flock-fleecing frauds. You know him from SiriusXM's Tell Me Everything, his stand-up, his viral rants, and his uncanny ability to find hope and humor in the middle of a dumpster fire. John's made a career out of reminding us all that laughter is sometimes the only weapon we've got left. John, welcome to Sane-ish.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for lowering your standards yet again. It's great. It's great that they just beat down your standards in men, that you'll keep letting me back in the door. I'm just so grateful for the monsters that came before me. I just want to say thank you.
I have to do a certain percentage of charitable interviews. It's just my contract with myself.
Understand. It's part of my parole release as well. I get it. Believe me. No judgments.
Wait, do I constitute one of your charitable interviews then?
We have to see how it goes first. I'm getting graded on this.
That's true. That's very true. But all things aside, welcome to my all-new podcast, John. I relaunched a new podcast. This one is called Sane-ish because, as you know, probably right now, better than a lot of people, it's impossible to feel like, oh yeah, I'm fully sane. This is all totally fucking normal. Nothing insane going on right now. And you have a New York City backdrop behind you, but you're not in New York City. You're in Los Angeles, and I want to talk about that. First of all, welcome, and how are you?
I'm great. It's great to be here. Congrats on the new show. I'm really excited.
Thank you very much. We have some friends in common, which is fun. We did a little off camera, like off recording, a little trip down memory lane. But yeah, I am very excited to talk to you. I haven't talked to you in a while. We have exciting news we're going to get to related to a certain book that you have coming out. We're going to talk about that. But let's talk about being in Los Angeles right now, because things have settled down a little bit, but the Marines and the National Guard are still there, right?
Oh, I can't tell you what a nightmare it is for me in Santa Monica, thinking about that tiny 4-block radius of Los Angeles 1 month ago, 15 miles from here, and how close I came to being snarled in traffic for a few hours because of cosplay. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, the richest man in the world has called him a pedophile. The tariff plan has collapsed yet again. He bombed Iran and can't stop lying about it and apparently achieved nothing. And I still haven't forgotten that they deployed the National Guard and the Marines to the streets of LA. I guess I was supposed to forget that with all the distractions, Joe, but no, it's still there, still pathetic, and still a symbol of his failure.
And a symbol of the abject cruelty of so much of what they're doing. You know, like taking innocent, like half of the people they have in ICE detention have no criminal records at all. They're taking, fathers of Marines. I don't know if you know who Jessica Craven is, but she's amazing. And she told a story about a friend of hers whose neighbor was helping his disabled wife. He'd been here for 30 plus years, and they came and took him. And now she has no one to take care of her. And it's just like this perpetual cruelty. Again, it does go back to so much of what you talk about in the book we're going to get to, Separation of Church and Hate. But the cruelty is that's on display here. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because it certainly doesn't feel like it's accidental.
No, it's not. And it's white supremacist cruelty. We have to be honest about the situation with undocumented migrants in this country, and our media doesn't want to do it. So they come here for two reasons. One is to escape danger. They're actually seeking asylum. And under the UN Charter on Human Rights, it is legal to seek asylum. If you are standing on American soil, you are legally allowed to seek asylum. So I don't really know where the illegals part comes in. But the bigger issue, the overwhelming majority of them, first off, the majority of undocumented immigrants aren't border crossers. They're people who overstayed their visas. There's 50,000 undocumented Irish in this country. What's the plan to get rid of them? Do you hear much about the Irish? You don't, because they're white. This is all about white supremacy. It's not about the border. And the greatest proof is um, they could make border crossing stop in about 2 to 3 weeks. They could completely stop it, because they cross the border for jobs that white men like Donald Trump hand out. There's a gigantic help wanted sign at our southern border, and there is no wall, no racist Fantasia medieval wall you can build that's big enough to hide the help wanted sign at our border. Donald Trump, and the media doesn't like to talk about this, is the only president who has hired undocumented labor because he didn't feel like paying a living wage to American workers. And he's done it in 2 different centuries. Polish illegals built his ugly tower on Fifth Avenue because he didn't want to pay American workers a decent wage. So they crossed the border because of guys like Trump. You pass a bill saying if you employ an undocumented immigrant, it's a federal crime and you go to jail for 1 year right away. Right away. You will see the border crossing stop. People will fire their nannies. They will fire their agricultural workers. They will fire their construction crews. Our economy will take a tremendous hit because let's not forget, Joe, our economy's always been propped up by exploiting marginalized labor, usually brown people, whether it's slaves or Chinese people building the railroads or the kids in sweatshops overseas making our gadgets these days. It's always been propped up. You get rid of undocumented immigrants and a salad's going to cost $75. I know it doesn't upset MAGA folks. They don't eat a lot of salads, but still, our economy will collapse. You could end it tomorrow. They don't want to. They don't want to end it tomorrow because they need this for perpetual votes. So I'm not even getting into the fact that these people never get to call themselves Christian again. We'll get to that part because the only way you can support Donald Trump's immigration policy is if you wag your junk at both the Old and the New Testament of the Bible and give Jesus the biggest pasty white finger you could possibly manage. Then you can do it. But it's all a racket. If they wanted them to stop crossing the border, they'd lock up the white people doing the hiring. The fact that they won't, and the fact that Man Baby is protecting undocumented workers in the agricultural sector to keep
I was
those
going to
food
ask you.
prices low, it
Yep.
shows that we are all part of the same hypocrisy. We're born into it. It's been there our whole lives. But the media doesn't talk about it. The Democratic Party doesn't talk about it. They could end it tomorrow. You don't need to build more concentration camps. That's the cruelty. That is the white supremacy. That's what they get off on. They get off on hurting people.
Yeah, and speaking of concentration camps, what Ron DeSantis is building in Florida, what is it, alligator Alcatraz, what they're
Oh,
referring to it as? I
yeah.
mean, that too. I mean, again, the cruelty, but this is here. This is happening here, folks, and it's not going to be like you said. It's not going to be the people that they need to keep those prices low. They're going to pick and choose what
Yeah.
types of people are going to be ending up there, and
It's all a
it
racket.
yeah, it is all a racket and it's disgusting. And now they're dehumanizing them in a way where they're talking about the alligators and the snakes in the
Yeah.
Everglades there as being the natural deterrent to
Well, that's
keep
why
anyone
they
from trying to escape.
but that's what stealing their children was, the natural deterrent. I mean, that's what Jeff Sessions said when he quoted Romans 13, and when we had a policy in 2017 of stealing migrant children, some of whom still have never been returned all these
Mhm.
years later. It's a deterrent. Here's the thing, when they started getting us to call these people illegals, which is a dehumanizing term, instead of calling them Christian refugees, which is what they are. These people at our southern border are overwhelmingly Christian, most of them substantially more Christian than the members of the Republican Party in our government. And when they started doing this dehumanizing thing, it made it a lot easier. Oh, like our German friends showed us so long ago, you convince people that these people aren't people and they will sign up for all manner of cruelty. So now these concentration camps in Florida, oh my God, it's like Trebubalinka. I don't even know what to call this thing that Ron DeSantis is doing. I'm still not intimidated or impressed by Ron DeSantis. He still wears heels. A man who hates trans people wears heels, putting that out there. But again, the cruelty is the point. It's been said many times. They despise the Bible and they despise the Constitution. Birthright citizenship is in our Constitution. You are legally allowed to seek asylum here if you're standing on our ground. This is how it's always been. This is how it was always intended to be. But now they look at the clock and they see that Caucasians are going to be a minority in the year 2045, and they're nervous and they're heavily armed, and they're freaking out.
And they don't even care about the cruelty when it comes to their own voters. They don't, I mean, just looking at this, I call it the billionaire boner bill. They call it the big beautiful bill. Some Democrats call it the big ugly bill, whatever the fuck you want to call it.
The donor fellatio act of 2025 is what I call
Right.
it.
So contained in that, and again, we're going to tie this all to the book because Mitch McConnell, who I love how you describe Mitch McConnell. But we're going to wait before we get that. Mitch McConnell has said about this bill, they'll get over it in reference to now we think the CBO is saying 12 million people in the next 10 years who will be kicked off their health insurance, the tens of millions of kids who are going to go without nutrition assistance, et cetera. He said they'll get over it. So let's talk about Mitch McConnell.
And he's leaving office. He's leaving.
Right. He's leaving, and yet he's leaving with this attached to his legacy. He had a few votes. I think he voted against Hegseth and maybe a couple other cabinet picks, the worst of the worst.
It's all his fault. It's all his fault, and he knows it, and he goes to his grave knowing. He could have told 2 or 3 Republican senators in 2021 to vote yes on the impeachment. This is all because Mitch McConnell thought, like most of us did, that the American people were more decent than we were after January 6th. He never thought it could possibly happen. I didn't think so either. I kind of thought beating the crap out of cops for a lie might be a red line for Republicans, but I didn't realize the bar has been lowered so far. Cheney just tripped over it in his underground bunker. And so Mitch McConnell can, afford to act brave in the end, but he brought all this on them. And they all did. It's going to overwhelmingly hurt red states. I mean, and it's arguing for socialism, because when you take Medicaid away from all these people, you take health coverage away from all these people, and maybe my 95-year-old, aunt with Alzheimer's can't go get a job at Walmart. When people get sick, what are they going to do? They're going to show up at the local emergency room, and the local taxpayers will foot the bill. So there's the irony, right? Obamacare was the opposite of socialism. It forced people to buy a crappy private plan. It was literally the opposite of socialism. But what Republicans want is pure socialism, and it's for you to have to pay when folks show up in your town.
Right. And Joni Ernst was walking through a cemetery after the night, doubling down on her comments the night before reference to this bill, saying, well, we're all going to die. I mean, let's now dive in. Let's dive into, this is a party.
Joni Ernst.
This is a party that wraps themselves in the flag, and they carry the Bible all the time. And what they're saying, what they're doing, do not jive, because what they're actually doing doesn't jive with them cloaking themselves in Christianity and saying that they care about their fellow man when they say we're all going to die when asked about what happens to the people who are going to go without their health insurance.
Correct. But they've already shown that. I mean, the projections are that 300,000 people, mostly children, will die because of the gutting of USAID. So they're already, these pro-life people, they've never been pro-life. They've never cared about life. Guns are the leading cause of death for children in this country. They don't want to do a thing about the born people, right? So they've already signed off on widespread death and destruction. Now it's going to be coming closer to home. And all I can say, Joanne, is that they seem very, very confident they'll be able to blame all of this poverty and all of these deaths and the slowdown in the economy on trans children and immigrants and Hunter Biden. They seem very, very sure they can get away with this time. And that's all they got is blame. That's all they can do. This is the same thing Republicans have done my whole life. They redistribute wealth to the upper 1%, and then they convince hardworking white people that this is good for them. These are the only 2 things they've been good at my whole life. And Democrats have only been good at cleaning up the mess after they trash things. Jimmy Carter got in because of Watergate, right? Clinton got in because 12 years of trickle-down collapsed. Barack Obama got in because George W. Bush still may have been the worst president of my lifetime. I don't know. I like that debate. The fact that Bush won't come out against Trump proves that Bush might be worse. We got Joe Biden, the most legislatively successful president of my lifetime, at least the first 2 years, because Trump was the worst. So my God, I can't even. I mean, we're going to get like a hybrid of John Lennon, Gandhi, and Obi-Wan at this rate because of this fuckery. But are we allowed to curse on the show? I should have asked that.
My show, of course.
It's your show. I know. It's like can I pray in church? Can I curse on your show? So this is going to be. I'd like to say that this is finally the way that red staters will wake up and realize that this party of aristocrats just waves a flag and hates who they hate, but doesn't actually care about them. But you know as well as I do that people on the coast don't understand the power of Fox News and that this is like an IV drip of lies and denial into America's brain all through the heartland. And it doesn't matter how badly they get screwed. Look, the only two times the Republicans have won the popular vote this century, assuming it wasn't rigged, but in 2004, you had this rich millionaire at birth who was an illiterate who had lied to us and Americans died. It was Bush, and they reelected him. And 2024, you had this rich millionaire at birth illiterate who had lied to us and Americans died, and it was Trump, and they brought him back in. So they don't really care. This white supremacy is stronger than morality. It's beyond reason. And a quaint little thing like the Bible or the Constitution isn't as powerful as tribalist bullshit.
And that's the thing. I mean, it has really jumped the shark, and it has really become a cult, a cult, of personality. What their worship is based on is nothing he could ever promise them in terms of policy. Like, they don't care. It's a sense of identity or something bigger that he's giving them. And also this they, them, those people, this boogeyman that is responsible for all their ills. Like, he
Yeah.
gives them those two things. He gives them
Yeah.
this access to a club they thought they were born into and yet were denied because some person from a country they've never heard of challenged their rightful claim to it, when all of that is bullshit. But he gave them that.
Rich people pay Republican people to make working people blame poor people.
Yeah.
Rich people pay Republican people to make working people blame poor people. And it always works, right? I mean, it's a formula. And if we're into the Christian thing yet,
Yeah.
I mean, the people keep saying, oh, how did the Christians go for Caligula? I mean, you have to, like, let me just say this. And this is for atheists too. I wrote my book for atheists and believers and agnostics and people of all faith. Anyone who wants to deal with a Christian nationalist. There is you don't have to believe in the Bible as literal fact to say that there is no way to follow the teachings of Jesus and the policies of Donald Trump at the same time. These are two Venn diagram circles that don't meet. The only thing Jesus and Trump have in common is they spent a lot of time around hookers and they both use ghostwriters, and that's really it. So how did they get the Christians to vote for Caligula? Well, it wasn't because Trump came out and promised to fight for the things Jesus commands of us. In Matthew 25, right before Jesus is going to die, during he does the parable of the judgment of nations, where he talks about the end of the world and where he's going to gather all the individuals and nations, and this is one they don't put in the Bible coloring books, but Jesus says, I'm going to divide them like the goats and the sheep, and I'm going to say who took care of the poor, who took care of the sick, who welcomed the stranger, and who was good to people in prison. Those are Jesus's 4 criteria for the individuals and nations. And so the ones who did, they'll say, well, you took care of me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was hungry and you fed me. I was a stranger, you welcomed me. And the sheep will say, Lord, when did we do this? As you did it for the least of my people, you did it for me. Then he turns to the goats. And this is like Jesus's memo to the Heritage Foundation. You didn't take me in. When you didn't welcome me as a stranger, you didn't feed me, you didn't clothe me, you didn't take care of me when I was sick, didn't visit me in prison. You didn't do it for the least of my people. You didn't do it for me. Essentially, Jesus is saying that individuals and nations go to heaven or hell based on how they care for the poor, the sick, the stranger, and the prisoner. That's it. He doesn't give a rat's ass about how often you go to church, how observant you are, how much money you tithe. He doesn't care how many hours you spent screaming at women outside healthcare clinics or persecuting trans children. Jesus gives you the criteria for a Christian nation. How did you take care of these 4 groups? So they're in direct opposite. And I mean, this is why Republicans always fight to put the 10 Commandments on a schoolhouse wall, never the actual words of Jesus. So the way that Donald Trump didn't get Christians to vote for him by promising to do the things Jesus taught, nonviolence, love your enemy, turn the other cheek, stop executing people, pay your goddamn taxes. That's what render unto Caesar means. No, I mean, Jesus never mentions abortion. He's against the death penalty. Trump did it by saying, I'm going to put you first. He did it by playing into the persecution narrative of right-wing Christianity, where we're always in power, but we're always under siege. There's a war on Christianity because they have to follow the law. There's never been anything out there that affects conservative Christian religious practice, just conservative Christian religious domination. The fact that they can't teach talking snakes in science class, the fact that gay people get to get married in this culture under our secular government. None of this stuff hurts conservative Christians whatsoever. It just keeps them from dominating. And Jesus's ministry is one of service, of humility, washing the feet of people. It's service, servant leadership. Jesus was not about total right-wing domination of the fucking school board. So it's all about humility. Being on top, and my religion is on top, is what scholars call the exact fucking opposite of Jesus's whole mission. So Trump did it by sucking up, by pandering, by playing into the persecution narrative, by saying, I'm going to put you first. In other words, idolatry and blasphemy. These are not people who follow Jesus. They follow Trump, and Jesus is not their Messiah. He is their mascot. Their Messiah is a fat, racist landlord reality TV show rapist from Queens.
There's a soundbite. Holy shit, yes. And also, these schools in Louisiana and Texas that are mandating that the 10 Commandments be posted are also
Right.
refusing to feed hungry school children, denying them.
Oh, but not even
meals.
that. They don't believe in it. Donald Trump has violated all 10. Donald
Yeah.
Trump has violated all 10 of the 10 Commandments, all 10 of them. I mean, we can go through them one by one, but he has. And so, I mean, bear false witness, thou shalt not kill. He killed more people than any president with the federal death penalty in 100 years. He carried out assassinations. Shall not steal. He stole from fucking vets with his fraud online university. I mean, keep the Sabbath holy. He bangs hookers and plays golf. This is a joke. These people don't believe in the 10 Commandments. If you believed in the 10 Commandments, you wouldn't vote for a guy who's violated all 10. So it's all just prick waving and it's all just a show. And the one thing they're teaching young children about faith is not to believe your parents, because they make you read this stuff on the schoolhouse wall, but then they vote for a guy who pees over this entire list. Their parents, Greg Abbott, they don't believe the 10 Commandments. They don't take it seriously.
So let's jump into, for anybody out there who doesn't know, a little bit of your backstory and your origin stories. Let's jump into the book. And congratulations, Separation of Church and Hate, A Sane Person's Guide to Taking Back the Bible from Fundamentalist Fascists and Flock Fleecing Frauds. By the way, as a fan of alliteration, congrats. That's fucking amazing.
you.
And I tried
Thank
to
you so much.
say that alliteratively as well. But let's talk about, first of all, a little bit of your backstory as to why you are particularly, the right person, and you really are, to write this book, to say the things that you've already said on this show. A little bit of your backstory, and then what the final impetus was for putting it into a book.
Wow. You're very kind. Well, it's not because I'm a good Christian. I don't pretend to be. I used to brag that I was. I was very smug as a teenager, quite certain that God liked me better. Um, that's the difference between spirituality and fundamentalism, right? Spiritual people use religion to become better people, and fundamentalists use religion to pretend they're better people. And I was raised by parents who were ex-clergy. My mother had been a nun. She grew up in the South, in the segregated South, and the only way out of poverty for her was to join the convent. They put her through nursing school and sent her off to Africa to work with lepers in the jungles of Malawi. Before they did, they briefly stationed her in Brooklyn, New York, at a Holy Family Hospital. My father had grown up in Brooklyn. He was a Franciscan brother. He decided after high school that's what he wanted to do, and he taught history to Catholic boys. He wore the brown robes and the rope belt and looked like the lost Jedi Knight of Flatbush. And my father um, had to go to the hospital for tuberculosis and fell madly in love right away with this quiet Southern girl in a nun's habit that he knew he could never have and had promised God he would never want. And so he couldn't tell her. They became very close friends, pen pals for years. Eventually, it's a long story, but eventually he got her to leave, and they settled down on Long Island and tried to raise us to be progressive, free-thinking, sexually repressed Catholics. And my dad was a big civil rights guy. He was a big social justice guy. He revered Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Dorothy Day, the founder of Catholic Charities. They were like the Holy Trinity in my house growing up. And my dad's goal was that I would be way too liberal to ever fit in with the Christians and way too Christian to ever fit in with the liberals. And every therapist I've been able to afford says this plan worked perfectly. But I was raised in a very extremely Catholic household. I mean, like, I had to get organ lessons. That's how Catholic it was. I mean, I was baptized in my parents' living room by a priest my mother had known in the jungles of Malawi, Africa.
Oh,
And I was always around clergy. There were always ex-nuns in my house. My father had various brothers and ex-brothers. There were priests over all the time, people from overseas. And my uncle was a deacon. My kid brother was an altar boy. It all felt very normal to me. And I was taught that Christianity was about love, service, kindness, mercy, helping others, turning the other cheek, not hating, fighting racism, like Dr. King did with scripture, fighting injustice like Gandhi did with nonviolence, fighting for workers' rights like Dorothy Day did, opposing war like St. Francis did when he left the Crusades and campaigned against war, opposing all manner of injustice. Let's not forget the first ever act of protest by a white person in this hemisphere was the Catholic priest on Columbus's boat, who was appalled at the way he treated the indigenous people. First act of protest by a white person was a Catholic priest against Columbus. America's got a long history of ugly Christianity, of Christians enslaving African people and exterminating indigenous people and exploiting the work of Chinese people and turning away refugees who were Jewish people and indefinite detention and torture of Muslim people and perpetual second-class citizenship for female people, right? But throughout our history, at every phase of all this right-wing Christian fuckery, real Christ followers pushed back. The abolitionists were led by people like Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass and the Quakers. Dr. King and Christians led the fight against segregation in this country. Christians led the fight for decent labor rights. And look at how many young people have talked their parents and grandparents out of a lot of homophobia in just the last 30 years. So I was, when I was a kid, my dad pulled me into the room to watch the news late at night to see Jimmy Carter sign the Camp David peace accord between Israel and Egypt. I didn't get it, but to him, this was everything America and Christianity could and should be. And then I grew up thinking, okay, Jesus is cool. It's about love. And then I grew up into this America where that's not what Christianity is. And if you watch the TV news in the 80s or the 90s, you saw all these ex-segregationists and blow-dry televangelists who were preaching about welfare moms and AIDS patients and feminists. And they weren't talking about racism as a sin. They were angry about protests against racism. Jerry Falwell was a segregationist who defended apartheid. As a young person, I was kind of embarrassed to be told I was the same religion as these people. But by the time I was in my 20s, if you told someone you were Christian, they thought, oh, you hate women and you hate gay people and you think that the government should force rape victims to be pregnant against their will. And it took me a lot of years to understand it, Joe. And over the years, when I started talking about this on stage, my agents and managers flipped out, but audiences liked it. I've gotten to debate Jerry Falwell and David Duke. I've been picketed by Westboro Baptist Church, and it's all because I have this controversial belief that the character of Jesus in the book, whether he's real or not, was not a dick. So I finally just started writing all this out, and then Simon & Schuster asked me to do the book in late 2023, and I tried to frame it around hate, that it's hate is not a Christian value. So you can't hate feminists, you can't hate Jews, you can't hate Muslims, you can't hate atheists, you can't hate gun control people, can't hate the gays, can't hate the immigrants, can't hate the poor people. Conservatives will hate this book, but it's not anti-conservative. It's anti-extreme right-wing Christian nationalists and anti-hater. And it's a guide to using the Bible when debating the Christian fundamentalist in your job, in your office, in your neighborhood, in your family, or in your social media feed. Because no matter what you believe, 9 times out of 10, the right-wing Christian is not on the side of Jesus. So I tried to do something like that with a lot of dick jokes to be a helpful guide.
Oh, well, thank you for that. I mean, every book should have a lot of dick jokes in it, but particularly one about the Bible. As a person,
I found dick jokes in the Bible that are included in this book, by the way.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yes.
I'm gonna check that out. But this is the thing. I think I couldn't be alone here. I think I often feel like I'm losing my mind when when someone like Mike Johnson,
Yeah.
who really does consider, or at least says he considers himself to be devout, can stand there and listen to people saying how many people in the state of Louisiana are going to be hurt by this legislation in a state that's already got one of the worst infant mortality rates, the highest hunger rates, the lowest education rates. And yet he, again, swaddles himself in this idea that he's so Christian. And I don't have, and that's why this book is so important, because I don't have a real strong understanding. I can't cite Psalms. I'm not Marco Rubio, whether genuinely or
That's
not.
okay.
Like I can't.
He doesn't believe them.
Well, that's the other thing. I do want to touch on Marco Rubio, because for whatever reason, I have a real fixation on his
Yeah, me
hypocrisy
too.
in particular.
Me
But
too.
that's why this book is so helpful for someone like me, because when I hear them say these things, I don't have this kind of response. I have my visceral response to
Me
why
too.
what I understand about Christianity, morality flies in the face of this. But this is like a guide and a roadmap that, like, I can look at a tweet and be like, okay, Paige, and I can find something that I can say, no, I can say this, and this is, they can't respond without having to like look at what they're doing in
That was
real reference.
That was the hardest part of me for writing it, was that Simon and Schuster kept wanting me to make it a guide. Originally, I had a lot more personal storytelling and embarrassing, awkward stories of my weird life, and a lot of history, so much history. And they were like, "Nope, keep it a guide, keep it simple, keep it just talking points and all the talking points that your right wing Christians will use." But in the case of guys like Rubio or Mike Johnson, the opposite of faith isn't doubt. Doubt is, I think, an essential part of any faith journey. If you don't have doubt, then you're just obedient, right? The opposite of faith is certainty, not a trust in something, a knowledge that God likes me more. Fundamentalists don't think they're better than you. They think God thinks they're better than you. And this is the essence of religious fundamentalism in all religions. And it's why religious fundamentalists should not be allowed to run governments and have control of militaries. It doesn't matter whether you're Christian, Jewish, or Muslim. The more extreme conservative you are, the more you have the same traits in common. And I go into it in the book. Women are always second-class citizens. Hindu, whatever. The more extreme conservative your religion is, women are second-class citizens. Sex is bad unless it's for procreation. Violence is okay if my side does it because I'm on the side of the one true God. There's always a fixation on punishment over healing in fundamentalism. And it's always perpetual victimhood, means I get to do whatever I want because I've been so oppressed. It, again, doesn't matter the religion. And we're witnessing right now when extreme fundamentalist Christians control America, fundamentalist Jews control Israel, and fundamentalist Muslims control the Middle East and Iran. You're not going to see peacekeepers come out. You're going to see douchebags who want to have violence because they think that God likes them best. That's the essence of fundamentalism. So Mike Johnson believes in his heart that it doesn't really matter at the end of the day because he's in power because that's what God wants. And maybe the reason they have to do this is to pay back all the donors who allowed them to get in power for all the good they're going to do. But they don't care about what's in the Bible. They don't follow Jesus. And the greatest sin here is the Democratic Party for ceding Jesus over to these frauds like they did the flag, and for the media for being terrified to ever ask a goddamn follow-up question. I never once heard the media say, "Hey, Mike Pence, where specifically does Jesus chase the gay wedding cakes out of the temple? Where specifically does your holy book say to punish people for terminating pregnancies? Where does Jesus say no room at the inn and repel the stranger?" The media lets these people call themselves Christian and prance around in their piety and never asks the inconvenient follow-up questions. Supreme Court, I mean, they did it again with abortion. They'll never say, "Where the hell does your holy book say you can't do it?" And the fact is, the Bible's not against abortion. It's in the Bible. God gives abortion tips in Numbers chapter 5. Abortions are legal and free in Israel, right what we call the fuck now, because Jesus' religion never banned them. And God never thought to have Jesus or Moses or Paul come out and say abortion's wrong. Never shows up in the entire Bible. But for 45 years, we've watched Christianity in this country be mutated. And Joe, they got the followers of Jesus to vote against everything Jesus talked about by talking about abortion, which Jesus never talked about. So I'm not surprised when you see these fraud. Paul Ryan was exactly the same. Ronald Reagan was exactly the same. Piety, piety, piety. But when it comes down to what's actually in your holy book, they don't know the Bible, and they're counting on you not knowing the Bible. And that's why I wrote this, because I'm tired of seeing my parents' religion being used as a cloaking device for douchebags.
I mean, that I can't think of more things that are more valuable, other things that are more valuable than that. And
Oh,
to the
super PACs are more valuable.
yeah,
What's under the ground in Greenland, all kinds of stuff.
renaming bodies of water,
Renaming bodies of water.
900 pounds of enriched uranium we don't seem to know the location of. But the last question, like you said, maybe this is a thing that's going to get people in southern states to wake up. And so I want to tie that to something you said about the Democrats, because I want to know, first of all, how you think the Democrats are meeting this moment. And I want to know what you think of how the Democrats can use what you're saying to push back, to fight back, and in particular, in a lot of these red states that are going to start feeling the impact of the legislation that is driven by their actual departure from the teachings that they so often beat the drum on. So yeah, can you help the Democrats, John? Can you help them? Help me, help you, help
I
them.
mean, the problem the Democrats have in many cases is that they're operating in the same system of bribery and hypocrisy that the Republicans are. It's a system that keeps a lot of people from speaking out too boldly because they were afraid of being buried by, a primary challenger with the other super PAC. But yeah, I mean, look, I think Democrats need to start taking on the Bible right away. I mean, they should have a progressive Christian caucus in the House and Senate. Like, just start reminding people what this book says, not because you want a theocratic rule, but to point out that these theocrats are frauds.
Yeah.
They don't believe in the things Jesus talks about. I mean, Acts of the Apostles is literally a blueprint for voluntary opt-in communism. These people haven't read this book. And the great irony here is Jesus's policies are actually really good for an economy. Joe Biden was closer to Jesus than most presidents of my lifetime. It's not just pleasing to God and Jesus in the book if you care for the poor. It's actually how you stimulate an economy, and Franklin Roosevelt understood it. I mean, what's the Will Rogers quote? You give a rich guy $1 and he'll invest it, but you give a poor guy $1 and it'll end up in the rich guy's pocket by the end of the day, but it will have passed through 10 hands and stimulated economies. Helping the poor, helping the struggling, that is good for an economy. Having people and whole populations who are an economic drag with an inadequate healthcare infrastructure. I mean, this whole country is like a mob restaurant that's being burned down for the insurance money at this point. So, I actually think you don't need to be a theocrat. And I don't believe in having a mandatory religion because our founders didn't either. But you don't need to believe in Jesus or miracles or any of that supernatural stuff to recognize the revolutionary ethic of his teachings, to recognize that, turn the other cheek, to break cycles of hatred and violence. The revolutionary ethic of the meek will inherit the earth. I mean, this guy was preaching in a country that was occupied by European imperial armies. So, and that's who killed him, by the way. So, I mean, it's like Jesus really freaked out people back then, and he really freaks out the right people right now. You want to freak out a Christian nationalist? Demand we welcome the stranger and care for the poor, and that people pay their taxes, render unto Caesar. Stop executing people. Have compassion. You're like that's how you freak them out. So, you'll get crucified for it, but it works, and you don't need to be religious. Some of the best Christians I've ever known have been flaming atheists, and some of the most godless heathens I've ever met have been very loud Christians.
Mm. Well, folks, this drops on August 19th. It is Separation of Church and Hate, a sane person's guide to taking back the Bible from fundamentalist fascists and flock policing frauds. There's no fuck in there, which is amazing because I just want to say fuck. But John, as always,
There's more curse words in this book than most Bible books, I will say. This is
and dick
very.
jokes.
I read a lot of books by theologians and academics. This is not one of them. This is deeply inappropriate. Very, very. I apologize to all your viewers in advance on this one. Very,
Yes, 'cause
very offensive.
my listenership they're pearl clutchers. They don't like a swear or a dick joke. But
Well, yeah,
John,
I wanted to write something that I wish someone had given me when I was 17 and couldn't understand why my religion suddenly seems so mean. So thank you for letting me come and talk about it, Joe. I love what you do.
thank you for writing it because right now it does feel like the hate in particular is relentless. And it's
Yeah.
really hard for people not only to navigate it, but to stay engaged on any level because they just kind of want to crawl into a ball and give up because it
That's
feels like it's coming on every front.
That's what I call what the fuck fatigue. That's this kind of gaslighting gish gallop they put at us, where our outrage circuits are burned out by this nonstop fucking segregationist opening up a fire hose of what the fuck's on us during our peaceful march. But that's when you got to get out of the game and read and live and remind yourself that this is all a miracle. We get to be here right now. Everyone goes through trying times in history. We could have been alive in World War II. We could have been alive in the Roman Empire with shitty plumbing. We got to be here. So we got to do our part during these dark times when we don't know if America's going to succeed as what the founders intended or not, and fight this indecency, pass the baton to the next generation, do our best, but have a lot of fun. Don't let these trolls steal your joy. Life is still precious and wonderful. Turn off the screens when you get overwhelmed and please go to art galleries, take a dance class, make love, paint, jump around, just do stuff, create and live and hug kids and hug old people and then get back in the game because we need you. But it's people like you who are really, really leading this fight. It's not the leaders. It's people like yourself. And I'd like to see a Democratic Party that starts showing up on shows like this more often. I mean, J.D. Vance, every racist with a fucking podcast in his mom's basement, J.D. Vance brings a motorcade outside. I think it's great. I meet a lot of great Democrats in the green rooms at CNN and MSNBC, but I think they need to start doing shows like this and shows like mine just a little bit more.
I could not agree with you more. That is not just born of my own shameless self-promotion, but I've long advocated for that because, look, we got to meet people where they are and talk to them the way that they talk to each other. And no offense to you, do a fucking amazing job on those panels, by the way, and thank you for that because we have the Scott Jennings of the worlds out there. But yes, and I'm working on that, John. I am trying to make them understand that, like, we're not going to build a Joe Rogan of the left. It's not about that. It's about the conversations and making people feel seen where they consume information.
And look at Zoran Mandani. Did he hire a bunch of consultants to help find the Muslim Joe Rogan? No, he knocked on doors and talked about policy, and we got to witness something in New York that you never see in this country, that I never thought I'd see. Young people being the highest turnout of all the demographics for an election. I mean, look at the amount of young people that showed up. Holy crap, Democrats, lean in on this. And again, religions are going away, right? As we know them. I mean, 2022 was the first year that religious membership in this country went under 50%. That ain't because of Jesus. It's not because of God. It's not because of the 10 Commandments or Santa Claus. It's because people are turned off to all this hypocrisy. I think the largest growing group are people who were raised religious and now consider themselves spiritual. And
Mhm.
if churches want to survive, they can't keep on dishing out all this hate because you've got a dwindling white audience eating that up. But taking care of the planet, fighting for the less fortunate, I mean, fighting for healthcare for the least of us, fighting for nonviolence around the world, like these are really popular ideas that align very well with the Democratic Party and the teachings of Jesus. And a smart Democratic Party will dive in on these scary socialist things right now because people know the system's not working for them.
A smart Democratic Party. Boy, there's an oxymoron for the ages, my friend. I love
Let's just
my
say
party.
a less timid Democratic Party, a less timid Democratic Party.
Yeah, I think
I'm
we
not a
have to shake.
Democrat, but I'm voting. I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for
Yeah,
him, Joe.
I am one, and we need to shake the establishment quite a bit because that's the Republicans are in the death throes of their own existence, and they know it. And the Democratic Party is fighting this like existential battle between the old guard and the new. And I think that we need to find ways to
Yeah.
adapt because the other party turned themselves into a cult.
But can I also just say, people are beating up on the Democrats a lot, and that's okay right now because they've got a year and a half to get this together. We got to remember that. Now is the time when, let Gavin Newsom experiment with his reality show, Dancing with Fascists, or whatever he's doing. Like, let Cory Booker give a filibuster that's not let him try different things. Let's stab their focus group, see what lands. No one's landed as hard this year as this guy Zoran in the entire Democratic Party, and no one saw this coming. So they got a year and a half to figure it out, get their fundraising going before the midterms come. But my belief is that the Democrats who raise the most money, the Democrats who get the most donations are going to be the ones who come out and say, hey, bitches, you in the cabinet, enjoy your looting. Enjoy all your criming as much as you can because the Constitution is back in the Congress in January of 2027. And all you bitches in this cabinet will have your hands on Bibles testifying about what you did the first 2 years. The Democrats that talk like that, they're the ones who are going to win. They're the ones who are going to win their primaries. They're going to get the most donations. And the ones who say, oh, let's try to, find common ground with the other side. I appreciate that sentiment, but we already know that's not going to happen. They're going to spit in your hand right now. And by the way, Kamala Harris was in this race for 100. Can I just say one thing? Kamala Harris got into this race. She had 100 days. And she got the third highest vote total of any person to ever run for the office in history against the most famous man in the world who's been running for the job for 9 years. 100 days, she got more votes than Barack Obama got both times, than Clinton, than Reagan got both times. So I won't have her incredible historic achievement called a failure in any way. Okay, we can place blame all day, and I'm so happy we're finally at the place where Democrats are stopping placing
Yes.
blame.
Yes.
But Democrats' whole thing is fuck you for only agreeing with me on 85% of issues. They just love to be divided and conquered. Now's the time for this disarray. They'll get their shit together, and what the party looks like a year from now will be very, very different. So let's all be part of it.
God willing. And I do. I call them the party of Veruca Salts. I feel like every Democrat I know is every cautionary tale in Willy Wonka, because that is exactly how it's felt for the last. And it was maddening. The last cycle was particularly maddening because it was like they weren't marrying Joe Biden. They weren't having his kids.
I know.
But it's very
There's
frustrating.
a lot of bad news. And look, the real culprit was the gullibility and dumbness of the American people. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. After beating cops for a lie, I'm sorry, man. Don't tell me it's not about racism and tribalism. A lot of us are just freaking dumb. I mean, a lot of my Muslim brothers and sisters in Dearborn, I'll criticize Biden and Harris for not opposing Netanyahu more. I'll tell you, yes, it's a genocide. I mean, as a Christian, you have to love Palestinian lives and Israeli lives equally, right? I'd love to hear a Democrat say that. It doesn't seem controversial. But there's many reasons why. But I think at the end of the day, we got dumb people. And we're all distracted, and we're all zombified. And sometimes it's going to take, and the Christians are easy to mislead. This bullshit that God saved his life, that God saved Trump's life. When you hear a Republican say that God made that bullet, missed by just 2 inches for the first time in his life, Joe, 2 inches was enough. The one thing you should say to the Republican because I consider it blasphemy to come out and say that God saved Trump's life. Okay, why? So Trump could shit all over the New Testament? So Trump could shit all over the 10 Commandments and the Beatitudes? Ask your Republican who says God saved his life. Do you remember the name of the man behind Trump who was killed by that bullet?
Right.
See if they remember. His name was Corey Comparator. He took a fucking bullet in front of his children. These people who are saying that God magically made the bullet just miss Trump's head, a bullet fired by a young Republican with the Republican's favorite gun that Democrats are the only people who tried to stop that from happening. Ronald Reagan and Gerald Ford tried to stop that assassination from happening. They probably can't remember the guy's name, but let them know. What they're essentially saying is it was God's will for that poor bastard to take a slug in his head in front of his children and for them to watch their father bleed out and die. That's the logic these people are actually advancing. It's blasphemous. Mike Huckabee pushes this shit. It's not Christian, and you don't have to be a churchgoer to call it out.
Wow.
Doesn't mean you hate religion. Criticizing Netanyahu doesn't mean you hate Jews. Criticizing Hamas doesn't mean you hate Muslims. And criticizing Trump doesn't mean you hate all races.
Just horrible, stupid people. And we do have stupid people, but we have enough people who are going to read this book, Separation of Church and Hate. John Fugelsang, congratulations. Look for this, guys, August 19th. Dick
Thank
jokes and guide to dismantling their bullshit hypocrisy.
The most mainstream thing I have ever done. And I've hosted America's Funniest Home Videos, so I hope people laugh.
That's right. Thank you so much, John Fugelsang. This was amazing, as always. I have 72,000 sound bites I cannot wait to promote because this was one of the most incredible conversations.
Listen, thank you for all you do, and I'm so thrilled that you have this great new podcast. And look, you know what a rock star you are, and thank you so much.
John, thank you for bringing your wit, your wisdom, and your relentless hope to Sane-ish. If you're listening, please make sure to put it on your radar. Put it in your calendar reminders, on your Alexa, have your kids or your goldfish, whoever, tell you in August, go pick up Separation of Church and Hate. You can probably pre-order it before then, but do yourself a favor and grab a copy. Share it with your friend, and let's keep this conversation going. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review Sane-ish. Share it with your people and follow us on Substack and YouTube for more unfiltered commentary and community. Until next time, stay strong, stay sane-ish, and take care of each other.